Hey homies, what's good? It's the Tominator, and today we're going to be counting down the top 10 calves of all time. Now, unlike hamstrings, this is a fun one because calves are one of those rare body parts where it's almost exclusively about the mass. This is arguably the most genetically predetermined muscle there is, because for the most part, you've either got them or you don't. And there's such variability between bodybuilders, even at the pro level, where surprisingly, many of the top competitors are honestly pretty underdeveloped in this area, and this might have cost them their pro card back in the day when they only awarded a couple of those in any given year. But anyway, aside from just pure raw size, we're also looking for shape, proportions, and vascularity to a lesser extent. But beyond that, there's really not much you can do conditioning-wise to set yourself apart. It's not like calves can show a whole lot of striations or deep separation like the quads or glutes. So yeah, it's a pretty simple muscle to evaluate. That said, there were so many great examples to choose from, the hard part was simply narrowing it down. But without further ado, my pick for number 10 goes to Joel Thomas. This is perhaps a bit of a case of recency bias, what with Joel just winning the Toronto Pro a couple weeks ago, but his calves really got on my radar there. And he's only sitting this low because he doesn't have a large contest history to draw upon, and he's rarely hit his peak thus far. So that makes it more difficult than it would for a seasoned Olympian who's repeatedly shown us what he's got. Even so, there's no denying that JT is packing some quality beef in this area. I really like how low the insertions go, coupled with his small ankle joints. This has a nice drumstick kind of effect where it looks like the muscle is jumping off the bone, so to speak. This right here is positively Dorian-esque from the front, and if he shows up like this a few more times in the years to come, these have top 5 potential. But unfortunately from the back, they don't look as great. Now, these were different shows, and he definitely wasn't in as good condition here, which is probably why the calves look smooth and sort of jimmied up, even though I don't think they were. He's just holding a film, and the picture quality isn't the best either. Anyway, as our first honorable mention, and this is going to shock a lot of you, and hell, it shocked me too, we've got Jay Cutler. So when I was initially brainstorming names for this video, Jay was a shoo-in for the top 10. I estimated he'd wind up somewhere in the middle, like that 5 to 7 slot, but the more I looked and carefully analyzed his contest pictures, the more I questioned whether he actually deserved it. Yes, Cutler had some great calves, but top 10 worthy? Not on my watch. You can go back to 2001, arguably his best shape ever, and notice how they barely outdo Ronnie's from the front. And Ronnie was often criticized for having somewhat weak calves, especially in comparison to his upper legs. From the rear, they were very good, nice and balanced and defined, but they don't exactly jump out at you like what we'll see with some of the entries to come. Here's a shot from 2009, his other best package, and you can see how the insertions are a little on the high side. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still got great calf genetics, and I'd take him in a heartbeat, but just keep watching and you'll see what I mean. Jay was a really tough cut to make, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will be pissed, but I don't play favorites here. I try to go by the evidence on hand. So no, in my opinion, Jay just misses out when it comes to the calves. Coming in at number 9 is Paul DILLETT. At 6'3", DILLETT is the tallest bodybuilder on this list, with no doubt the longest shins as well. But coupled with his great shapely mass, I feel his calves are possibly the most aesthetics out of anybody's, and also the most underrated. They truly were a sight in poses like this. Size-wise then, DILLETT could obviously hang with anyone. Here in 93, he's probably outdoing even Dorian Yates, if we're being objective. Granted, he might be out-angling the champ, and in general, I wouldn't rank him above the Shadow, but right here, this one's going to Paul. From the rear, he beats his contemporaries Sean Ray and Flex Wheeler, and even holds his own against some real heavy hitters, like Nasser Sonbaty and, once again, Dorian Yates. Although in this particular comparison, I would have him third. I think what really helped him secure his spot was the fact that his joints were remarkably small for a big man. Look at how the calves just neatly taper down into the ankles. That's a huge contributor to his aesthetic appeal. And here's a downright nasty training photo showcasing all kinds of detail and definition. It's too bad we never see this type of thing on stage. If only stage lighting could match the average gym's lighting, the sport of bodybuilding would be so much better off. Anyway, that gentleman beside him is named Paul DeMaio, and he takes another honorable mention. DeMaio had great calves, but truthfully, his quads were the more impressive feature by far. His calves were fully developed, but lacked the raw mass and long muscle bellies of most of the guys on this list, which is why he missed the cut. At number 8 is Dallas McCarver, may he rest in peace. Man, I didn't realize it at the time I was making this vid, but there are a lot of deceased bodybuilders featured here, possibly more than for any other body part. Make of that what you will, it's probably just coincidence, but the fact remains that Dallas had some of the largest calves ever. From the front, that inner head really jutted out, and the insertions were just stupidly unfair. When he was full, they appear to go straight down into the ankles. From the rear, they were good, but perhaps a little lacking in detail. This is why I couldn't put him any higher, because compared to some of the all-time greats, this doesn't quite measure up. McCarver also had a tragically short-lived career, so that didn't help either in terms of really cementing himself. But still, an absolute phenom when it comes to the calves, and he deserves to be recognized for it. Another bodybuilder who recently passed away, Matt Mendenhall, is our next honorable mention. I was so close to including him because he's got a few truly mind-blowing calf pics, but in the end I decided against it because his actual contest photos were scarce and generally not as impressive. But man, if you want to talk genetics, very few ever exceeded Mendenhall. Branch Warren checks in at number 7. Branch may just be the only bodybuilder that graced all 3 leg-related lists for quads, hamstrings, and now calves, so he's certainly got to be mentioned in the best legs ever discussion. And while nobody's denying that he absolutely earned that comeback victory in 2009, Jay is frankly being outmatched below the knee here by Branch. Just more evidence for why he was omitted. Warren's calves often appeared to be carved from granite. It's particularly apparent in some of these back poses where you can see a sharp delineation along the bottom edge of his calf muscles. But if you guys were pissed about Cutler's exclusion, you're going to be livid after this next honorable mention, because Tom Platz also did not make the cut. Yes, just like Jay, I figured he'd be a sure lock for it, but after reviewing his photo gallery in depth, I couldn't find enough standout calf shots. There's definitely a few photos from the back where they looked world-class, but from the front, not so much. I'm sorry guys, but if we put aside the name for a second, this just didn't quite do it for me. He's still way up there, but not quite top 10 worthy. Okay, and for the few of you who haven't left or rage quit the video yet, let's carry on. Flex Lewis comes in at number 6. Flex for me is arguably the best current pro when we're talking about this particular muscle group. Like Dallas, he's got some utterly nutty insertion points and just a big honking pair of calves. But unlike Dallas, he's also got the benefit of greater consistency and a long-spanning track record of excellence. As a 7-time 212 Olympia champ, Lewis brings the beef along with the conditioning. It's really tough to still keep that fullness while being this damn shredded. Even in his youth, you could already tell that his potential was through the roof. The mass and proportions look utterly cartoonish here. Okay, Ben Pakulski lands at number 5. Now, Ben's got some of the craziest calves you'll ever see, hands down. What really stood out to me was how well developed that outer head was. It was basically equal in size to the inner head, which is very rare. From the front, that might not be so obvious, but they still look absolutely massive. He also had a very thick soleus, which is that triangular portion at the bottom. And for what it's worth, he had some of the best training photos as well. I'm basing these lists primarily on contest pictures because they tell the real story, but it can be nice to supplement in some more flattering photo shoot or training pics too. I'm sure many of you guys remember this legendary group shot. So from left to right, you've got Ben Pakulski, Jeff Long, who gets a shout out but didn't make the list, and another bodybuilder we'll see a bit later. But this photo helps you appreciate just how big Pakulski's calves were going side to side, and how thick and well defined they were along the bottom. This is truly mind-boggling stuff, and you'd be forgiven for thinking it's photoshopped, but it's not. Okay, and now we move on to some real heavy hitters. From this point on, the video is no longer about calves, but rather full-grown cows. Nasser Sonbaty drops in at number 4. Quite simply, Nasser had some of the hugest calves you'll ever lay eyes on. The inner gastroc head may have been unsurpassed. This is so freaky, I'm honestly questioning whether he was sight enhancing there. It's well known that in the later stages of his career he was injecting his deltoids, and likely his biceps a bit as well, so we can't put it past him. But assuming these were 100% solid muscle, he's gotta earn a spot up here among the best of the best. There's even a couple shots where he goes toe-to-toe with Dorian and comes out on top. Certainly from the front, his calves were more eye-catching. That said, I would generally hold Yates in higher regard when we're talking about the calves, which is why he comes out ahead at number 3. It could certainly be argued that the Shadow possessed the best calves of all time, and I think few would make that contention with Nasser. There was no shortage of freaky, rock-hard, and vascular calf shots of Dorian. Finding pics for this video was easy. He was also an expert at highlighting this attribute, and took seemingly every opportunity to do so. Side triceps? How about a side calves? Signature pose? Calves? Ab and thigh? Nah bro, try abs and calf. How about just the calf? Here's an uncommon screen cap from the 1995 Olympia where he was congratulating runner-up Kevin Levrone, and you can see just how damn good he was even when standing genuinely relaxed. I love this one because it's effortless. He wasn't even flexing or trying to look impressive, and it's still amazing. One could say that this is the mark of true greatness. But as laudable as Yates was, I still put 2 men ahead of him, if only barely. The first of these is Mike Matarazzo coming in second. Mike had an absolutely jaw-dropping pair of calves. I feel like they were even a touch above Dorian's when seen from the rear, because they were so sharply defined, and they were just as massive and freaky as Nasser's, but with even better conditioning, generally speaking. Even the magazines back in the day were hailing them as the calves of the decade. Now, it's debatable for sure, because as we've seen, the 90s featured a ton of outstanding calves, but Matarazzo edges it out in my opinion. I think it was partly due to the fact that his quads were never as large as some of these other mass monsters like DILLETT, Dorian, or Nasser, and that actually helped his calves stand out more. It's an illusion of proportions, and it worked to his advantage in this case. Alright, and before we reveal number 1, let's just rattle off some more honorable mentions. I'm not even going to bother to describe them this time, but these are a few other names that came close, but no cigar. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chris Dickerson, Lee Priest, Aaron Baker, Steve Kuklo, Nicholas Vouliaud, Antoine Vaillant, Hunter Labrada. Shit, you could even toss Phil Heaton in the mix as well. All exceptional calves, but not quite top 10. So, who emerges at number 1? Well, this isn't exactly a household name, but any bodybuilding aficionados should have seen this one coming a mile away. We're talking about Eric FANEHOUSER. This dude only did a handful of shows, and he only made it to the Olympia once back in 2010, where he finished dead last. Yet this video isn't about overall bodybuilding greatness, it's about the calves, baby. And what we have here is sort of like when you see a beautiful woman with the most breathtaking teeth, and you start wondering, are those things even real? Did she get implants or surgery or something? Because it just looks too perfect. Well, in FANEHOUSER's case, it would barely surprise me if you unzipped them to reveal a football had been embedded behind each of his shin bones. In my estimation, these are the most legendary pair of calves to ever grace the pasture and mature into full-grown cows. In fact, they're no longer even cows anymore at this point. These are some grass-fed, free-range, raging bulls injected up the wazoo with all kinds of growth hormones. Yeah, how's that for some descriptive imagery? Okay, we're going to go ahead and end the video now. Hope you enjoyed it, as this finally concludes our long-running Best Body Parts series. Well, at least until I decide whether or not to make one for the top 10 legs overall. But honestly, guys, I'm spent. This series was a total biatch to make, and I was almost regretting starting it just a few entries in. It was like, shit, what did I just commit to? But we made it, so there you go. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Until the next time, it's the Tominator, reminding you to stay classy, San Diego. Wait, that's not it. Sorry, it's been a while. Let's try this one again. I'll be back.